Welcome to the Hud Grad Club. I'm Chris Webb, and I'm the Alumni Engagement Career Consultant with the University of Huddersfield's Careers Employability Service. And, full disclosure, I'm also a University of Huddersfield graduate. So I've generally got pretty positive things to say about both the institution and any of our graduates. But don't take my word for it. In this podcast, we'll be meeting different members of the University of Huddersfield's global alumni community, finding out what makes them tick, about their experiences during their time at the university and their career journeys since completing their studies. Join us as we explore the inspiring, innovative and diverse range of individuals that make up the Hud Grad Club. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Hud Grad Club, our podcast celebrating the University of Huddersfield alumni community. And Samar, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris. Hello, everyone.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today. Now, if we've got people watching or listening to the podcast who've never come across you before or your work, tell us a little bit more about your kind of background at the university and what you're doing now.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm Dr. Samar Javed from Huddersfield University. I've completed my PhD in knowledge management in think tanks. That was title of my PhD, which I completed from the Business School, Operations and Logistic Department. I completed that in 2017, graduated in November, and currently I am a lecturer at University of Derby Business School, lecturer in business and management. After completing my PhD, I had been on KTP project with Huddersfield. So it was about 8-9 years at Huddersfield. I did some lecturing as well afterwards.
So still maintaining that strong connection to the university, which is what we always like to see. So yeah, thank you for that introduction, Samar. Really kind of useful to sort of hear a bit more about your background. And I know we're going to dig into that in a little bit more detail in the podcast as well. But we start every episode, as always, with our greatest Hud story ever told section. So this is an opportunity for you to reflect a little bit on your time at the university and any sort of special memories you might have. So I guess first question really is, how did what brought you to the university in the first place, and are there any kind of greatest Hud story memories you'd like to share?
That's a big question. So out of 8-9 years, what shall I choose? It's when I've been thinking, it's not that easy. What brought me to Huddersfield is the Huddersfield town. So when I was choosing for my PhD in a foreign institution, first choice was my research selection, research area, and accordingly, it was the research supervisor. But the second thing I looked at is a calm town, which won't be that busy as like London, which won't be, with the rush of underground trains and all. So that was a preference, relatively cheap to the London areas as well, geographically northern area. And I like greenery as well. So probably that's what brought me to Huddersfield. But another key reason for which encouraged me to continue with my application, complete and join, is the PGR administrator. So the PGR administrator, who I initially got responses from, and she supported me throughout my PhD journey as well. She is a lovely lady. She was called Parveen. She had now left the university. But yes, so she was so helpful in responding. And I was finding that journey of application process, which could be quite tedious, very useful, and I knew that there is someone supporting me on the other end, while sitting on the other side of the world was quite a challenging challenging point for me, for someone who had never been out of a country where they're born. So I'm from Pakistan, and to come to UK was my first international experience.
Wow, fantastic. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that journey and sort of what brought you, from kind of Pakistan to the UK and how that journey kind of progressed. But I think before we do that, you mentioned obviously 8 or 9 years with Huddersfield, lots of memories, very difficult to pick just one. But do you have one or two that you do want to share on the podcast?
But I clearly remember my graduation day. My parents were here with me, my father, my mother. That day was superb, and obviously I had graduated. That was one day. My PhD Viva day was another tough one. Uh, but I'm really glad. I'm really thankful. My supervisor, who had been the toughest one throughout the 4 years of my PhD, and was the most supportive person on the Viva day. So that was lovely. Um, and other day example I can give is, and these examples are the formal days, and there are so many informal days examples as well. That is, I participated in a 3M research competition, which is a world-renowned competition. And in that, you present your research in 3 minutes. So 4 hours of research going to be done in 3 minutes. I reached up to the final round of that. I was a semi-finalist. But that was a tough day for me. I had my night before in hospital with my friend in ICU. In the morning, I thought, okay, I'm not leaving it halfway through, and I reached it and I did it. I really enjoyed the presentations there, and the other presentations were very competitive.
Wow, really challenging. I mean, trying to kind of distill that down in 3 minutes, must have been incredibly difficult. And I mean, I'm looking here at our podcast notes, and there were two kind of other mystery phrases that came up in your greatest Hud story memories: spring water and Candy Crush. Tell me about those. What was the meaning behind those mysterious phrases?
Yes, so these are the informal things. My office fellows, and at that time during my PhD, we had a big office where we were like 20 or more people sitting in that room sharing that office. They would know, but people behind outside, or the formal people wouldn't know that. So I've actually completed my PhD through Candy Crush. Every time when I'm out of the meeting, I've been banging on the walls, crushing them to get out of the research frustration. My, day fatigues were being relaxed by the Candy Crush. So it was a necessary ingredient of my PhD.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, I think, as you said, there's always people always kind of focus sometimes on the formal, but of course all those kind of informal moments are just as important. Key ingredient. I love that. Who knew that Candy Crush could have been such an important sort of factor in the PhD? Amazing.
And spring water.
Spring water. Yes, we didn't even come to spring water. Was there a significance behind spring water, or?
It is. That was my first cultural shock. I am from a lower class family from a developing world. I'm from such a family where I'm the first one who had traveled in a foreign country for higher education, getting that highest level of education as well. So I don't class myself from a deprived background. I am very well off, and I consider myself blessed from many perspectives. But I had never been exposed to many luxurious things, I can say, or many posh things. The brand kind of things is beyond my world. So my first event, which I attended at Huddersfield University, it was a seminar as a refreshments on the table. If you are at university, we do serve some tea and coffee, and sometimes cookies, and some spring water and still water. So in my dictionary, I only had still water And the spring water was actually when you go to the countrysides and the natural water you get, that was the spring water. And rather than the spring water, the sparkling water with flavor which we have in here. And as you can now have guessed, I am a Muslim. I don't drink or cannot take any alcoholic drinks. So we had in that seminar drinks served. I took a sip of that and it had flavors and sparkles in it, which gave me a right shock to death. I had to rush to the toilets that I've drank something wrong. And to be honest, before that, I had no occasion where I had even seen the bottles of any alcoholic drinks. So that was a big deal. Whole day I'd been in a thought, what did I had? What have I done? And then I had to confirm with few friends to make sure that I hadn't had anything wrong.
That's a great story, and it's a really good, I suppose, kind of lead in to talking a little bit more about your career journey, because you mentioned obviously earlier, you know, kind of having grown up, having come from Pakistan, and now obviously working in the UK. So tell us a little bit more about that journey. So, you know, what kind of brought you, I guess, to the sort of field that you're in now, the research field you're in now, and what kind of, I guess, how did that journey progress from kind of Pakistan to the UK? What does that look like?
Long journey, many memories, ups and downs, lots of thoughts behind. So mainly where I started my professional work, my professional journey started from a think tank organization, which was a small charity, not charity, a non-profit organization doing research. I served there for more than 4 years, and my PhD topic originated from there while managing the research projects, improving the research process, and thinking of how an organization doing research can achieve efficiency. That generated my interest towards knowledge management. And I thought, okay, knowledge management and think tanks, is it there? And at that time when I started, there were no studies available about that. No one was actually convinced of very few. So in whole Pakistan, there was only just one academic who had idea of knowledge management, who I came across. Then I did a preliminary study. I interviewed about 18 very senior researchers, experts, that, okay, would that topic be appropriate or not? And from there, I started exploring about the knowledge management, knowledge transfer research, which was, of very interest in UK. And I started looking for PhD supervisors. I couldn't find one in Pakistan. And my first degree is in computer sciences. So I'd been thinking about some relevant topic. My first love was artificial intelligence
Very
from my
topical.
research type. And knowledge management was somehow, I was finding that related to that as well. So my business degree, MBA, and my computer sciences degree, I wanted to make a combination of that as well. And I thought, okay, so knowledge management is the key. It was basically the supervisor, and my PhD supervisor is Professor David Bamford. So I came across his profile and I started interacting. Personally, I was looking around the Manchester area. So Huddersfield was very convenient from that side as well. And yes, that's landed me to a PhD in Huddersfield.
And what was that experience like, as you said, kind of applying and then coming over to the UK? Was that your sort of first experience having travelled to the UK, or were you familiar with the country before you started the PhD?
That was my first international travel. I had never traveled before that out of my country. And even within my country, I had not traveled alone. So a lone journey without my family, that was a first experience. Definitely very harsh one. I wasn't, can't say I wasn't ready. It was somehow came to me with certain personal challenges which I was facing at that time. So it was very difficult and quite difficult to explain even. And in terms of, we can think of financial challenges which were there, and that made me that, okay, I'll be working alongside. So throughout my degree, I had been looking for various kinds of student jobs. And at Huddersfield University, I've done all sort of jobs, from graduation to examination, from the admin office to international office, open days, things like that. So you name it, I would have experienced that.
So you've got a good idea of how the university works by now, definitely. As you said, 8 or 9 years of kind of covering so many of those different roles.
Yeah.
And
well, things have changed very fast. The academic world, as well as the recent years, have gone very quickly. So things have changed, but yes, I can say I had that deeper idea over those years. So my first very, very formal work, other than the student's job, was a research assistant project on a funded one, and that was in a different department. So my PhD is in operations department, and my second supervisor from the leadership and management department, and the research assistant job I was doing in the accounting and finance department. So, bit of more, multiple departments I had. In my KTP projects, I worked with computing and engineering school as well. So I had few collaborations there. I worked with the textile department as well on a project. So, and that journey is now leading to the KTP. Right after my PhD, I joined the KTP project. KTP is a knowledge transfer partnership project through Innovate UK. That was a formal full-time job for me after PhD. But that led me with diverse experience of industry as well as academia.
And that's really interesting to hear, Samar. What's kind of steered some of those things? Because you mentioned obviously about within your career, you had the business background, the kind of computing engineering background, the diversity of projects that you've worked on. Has there been sort of a particular kind of interest underpinning all of that that's kind of helped you make decisions on which projects you want to kind of pick up, or have you sort of been following the thread as it's appeared?
I won't say it's just, simple following the thread. It's definitely more than that. But I am a very tenacious person who does not leave the opportunity come in the way. So I had availed as many as I can catch and, could have. My supervisors throughout the journey had been telling me, Samar, how many balls you gonna catch? So calm down. Calm down. I always had like hands full. So I'm a very opportunistic person, looking through the things, which can be difficult or challenging, but finding the way out of that. And luckily, I'm very blessed. I'm thankful to God for that. I did found that environment and the people around who supported. I cannot, deny the support from the community of Huddersfield I've been living with. I've lived with the Asian community, Muslim community most of the time. They had been very supportive and they made me feel homely, as well as my supervisory support throughout the tenure. My PhD supervisors, my KTP supervisors, they played huge role in encouraging me and keeping me up through very tough times as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you said, that the importance of kind of people within our careers, it's come up so many times on the podcast. Are there any other kind of particular individuals you might want to give a shout out to who've maybe been influential through your career? I know you've talked a lot about your PhD supervisors and the community at Huddersfield. Anyone else you'd like to mention?
Yes, so my KTP with Deluxe Pets Manufacturing, Deluxe Pet Limited, in as an entity, has played massive role in giving me that confidence as a professional, as well as recognizing me, recognizing my expertise, I can say, and giving that encouragement as a family group. So I came alone here. I didn't have family, but I was served like a family member, which is, I cannot be thankful enough to the community for that. Managing Director of Deluxe Pets, Mrs. Razak, she has been a lovely friend of mine, elder sister. She treated me as a sister throughout the journey. Before KTP, I had that relationship, and even after that, that relationship is there. It's a very close friendship now. Even in my emergency context, her number is always there. Because at the early stage I was thinking, oh, whose number I gonna put in here? I don't know anyone. She said, oh, I'm here, and since then it's her. Other than that, my friend called Habiba Yasmin, she was the person who I found early days, uh, and since then I've been living with her, enjoying the friendship. She provided me the whole family she had. So whether it's Ramadan or Eid or any festival, I've been enjoying with that family. They have never let me feel that I'm alone. So that was lovely.
Wow, I mean, it sounds like you've had some brilliant support there, and as you said, I think particularly, obviously, making that first journey, outside of your own country, so many kind of things to adapt to, as you said. So, having that support has obviously been, a massive kind of impact on you, and it brings us really nicely to the final part of the podcast, which is our underrated careers advice section. So, do you have any kind of advice or insights from your career so far that you think are particularly useful for maybe current students or graduates or anyone else who might be watching or listening to the podcast?
Obviously, one of the traits which had been encouraged and always highlighted by my mentors as well, and my father, tenaciousness. Keep going with it. Do not let things overcome you. Try, as much as possible. Your tenaciousness is something, if you keep trying, doesn't matter if you fall few times, there would be a time when you will be raising up. So that's the key I keep with myself. Honesty and truthfulness are the generic things which we can advise. Many times, specifically for the international students, when they start the journey, there is so much to pull them down. And you'll not find everyone who will be helpful. You'll not find all the circumstances helping you. Not even the factors from the weather. First year, the weather will kill you, but then you'll get used to of the things. And if you'll keep going, that will make you succeed.
Wow, excellent advice there. And I think in our podcast notes, I looked, you also mentioned about that keeping confidence and the ability to negotiate. So tell us a little bit more about that. Where is that kind of factored in to your advice?
That's my area of development. I'm still learning that.
Okay.
So I've always struggled to negotiate. Since since my childhood, I can say I just agree on what I get, and I hardly, ask for it. But throughout my journey of PhD, I did learn that I do know how to ask for help. That's one thing. But on the other hand, from the career advice specifically, negotiating for your role, negotiating for your rewards is another deal, which I shy off. And I know now we shouldn't be shying off. With my some recent experiences, I'm having that strong feeling. If I have asked little more, I would have got that. So keep that advice for the students, that don't shy to ask and negotiate what you want.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point, and what maybe we don't always talk about, like you say, when it comes to kind of careers advice. But I think that point, particularly you mentioned there about tenaciousness, it's such an underrated quality. We kind of can talk a lot about, technical or transferable skills and all those sort of things, but as a kind of general quality, as you say, that ability to push forward, to go for the things that you believe and you care about is, hugely important in our careers. Wow, Samar, thanks so much. We packed so much into that episode, and fascinating to hear about your kind of career journey so far. If we've got any students, graduates, or anyone else who's been watching, listening to the podcast, who might want to find out a little bit more about you and your work, where can they find you or get in touch with you?
LinkedIn is a very common source we can use. If anyone drops me a message there, I'm happy to respond. And I'm not a very social media person. I'm not on the other social media sites. But yes, that's one side, or my official email IDs is another source.
That is absolutely fine. Yeah, no, we don't pressure people into being on all sorts of social media. So what we'll do is make sure we'll share your LinkedIn on the screen for those who are kind of watching the podcast. And if you're listening, we will make sure that we put that in the episode notes. But that brings us really nicely to the end of the episode. Samar, thanks so much for joining us, becoming the latest member of the Hud Grad Club. And we wish you well with everything moving forward.
Thank you so much.
Take care. All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Enjoyed the podcast? Then go to the University of Huddersfield YouTube channel for all of our future episodes. Subscribe, like, and don't forget to hit the bell button for notifications. If you'd like to be involved in the Hud Grad Club podcast moving forward, please get in touch with us on alumni@hud.ac.uk.